What's up, carnivores? Zach here with American Smoke, and today we're making some delicious, hearty, wholesome, nutritious, warm your soul, homemade vegetable soup, making it only the way that my mama and my granddaddy and my family told me how to do it. Come on over here, have a look at this. Don't get much better than that right there. We got all the good stuff. Y'all stick around, because this is what we're gonna be making today. I'm gonna show you how to do it. Let's get it. The first thing that you're gonna need for a big recipe like this is a big pot. I've got my Loco cooker pot ready to rock and roll, and we're just gonna go ahead and get some water in the pot. I've got a gallon of water here, and what I've done is I've put a chicken bouillon cube into this water. It just adds a little bit of extra flavor. We're gonna be making our own broth. We're gonna get that one in there. We're gonna put one more gallon, and then we're gonna put all of our chicken in there and get it boiling. So while our water heats up, we're gonna talk about something really important with these Loco cookers. And that is, you wanna make sure that you never fire it up before you get water or some sort of liquid into these pots, because they are made out of aluminum and it will melt a hole right through them really quickly if you don't. So never make that mistake. It happens to people. But if you're looking into getting one of these and making a big pot of soup that you can freeze like we're doing today, make sure that you don't turn your heat on before you get anything in there. Bad idea. Let's go ahead, get our chicken out of the packaging. For this recipe today, this is the biggest pot I've ever made. And so we're sort of, eyeballing it and just going off of, taste, feel, look, that sort of thing. But I've got a whole package of chicken thighs, really rich meat, lots of fat. So this is 6 chicken thighs. What we'll do is we're gonna boil all this till done, then we're gonna take it and shred it. On top of that, we've got 3 boneless, skinless chicken breasts, because that's what was on sale at the grocery store. As is with most of this stuff, it's what was on sale. I don't have anything pokey. Get our boneless breasts in there. Next step in my process is what we've got here is some boneless stew meat. Stew meat's a little bit cheaper, and you're going to be cooking this for a while, so it's going to get nice and tender. It's going to provide a lot of beefy flavor for our stew. Now these are about 3/4 to 1 pound packages, and I've got 4 of them. The good thing about this vegetable soup and making vegetable soup is that you sort of make it your own. For instance, I like more corn and beans and peas in mine. You may not prefer those things, so you don't have to add that. You might like more okra or something like that. It's just really see what you like about it, see what you don't like about it, and adjust your recipe. My recipe is based heavily on the type of soup that my grandfather used to make and that my mother used to make. That's what I grew up eating, so that's sort of what I aim for. What I'm doing now is I'm fishing through some of the pieces of this stew meat, and I'm just cutting it into smaller pieces. What you want to consider is that you've got all these elements that are going to be in the soup, and you want to think, will I be able to fit this and some vegetables into a bite? And if it's so big that you're just going to have like one large piece of beef in your bite, you want to size that down a little bit, make it a little bit smaller to where it's a little bit more usable. And that just improves the experience that you have when you're eating. And so I'm just going through, shrinking all these larger pieces down, and we're gonna do this on all 4 packs. All right, so now that we've got all this stew meat cut up into manageable size chunks so that they're made for easy eating, it's time to brown this and add a little extra flavor to our soup. All right, so we've been in a roll and boil now for a few minutes. Let's go ahead, check it out, see how everything's looking. Everything's coming along nicely. We're gonna give these just a few more minutes, and then I'll check them with a thermopin, and we'll get them out, let them cool, and we'll shred them. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get our cast iron skillet nice and hot. We're using our beautiful cast iron skillet from Austin Foundry Cookware today to brown up this beef and get it ready for the soup. So what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be browning all of our beef with just a little bit of salt and pepper, and that's gonna form what's called a fond on the bottom of our pan. We'll be adding a little bit of water to that, getting that fond out of there, and then that's gonna add even more flavor to our soup. We've got a huge amount of stew meat today. This looks like about half a brisket's worth. Get that in there. All right, so that's about half of our beef in the pan. We're gonna give that a little bit of a seasoning, and then we'll brown it up. Seasoning here is simple. We're just going salt and pepper. Everybody watch your eyes. We got the river wind blowing out here today. River wind takes no prisoners, shows no mercy. Nice dose of salt. And we're gonna get it stirring. All right, so all this is browning up really nicely, except for that piece, which became a little doggy treat. So we're just browning this up to kind of adhere some of that salt and pepper flavor to the beef. You can just throw this right in if you want to, straight into the pot once you got your veggies in there, and just let it brown in there. But this is just making sure that when you get a bite of beef in your vegetable soup, which I know that sounds weird, but when you get a bite of beef, it's got its own little punch of flavor to it. All right, let's get that second round of beef going. I know it's already smelling better out here. Y'all let me know if you've got your own vegetable soup recipe that you make a big batch of. Tell me what you do different than what I'm doing. What's your favorite old school passed down family secret that you've got, anything like that? I'm always looking for anything that's, you know, an improvement, so y'all let me know. Okay, so our chicken's all done. It's been boiling for about 20 minutes. So we're gonna get that out and get it onto the cutting board so it can cool down, so we can get that shredded up and ready for our soup. So you can see we've got some really nice chicken broth, which is also gonna really work to add a lot of flavor to the soup. All right, so now that we've got the beef and the chicken cooked and ready for the pot, it's time for the fun part, which is adding in all of our vegetables to this mixture. Like I said earlier in the video, is you sort of pick out the stuff that you really like. One thing that's a couple things that are essential for me are some gumbo vegetables. Now you can go and find all this stuff and slice it all up however you like, fresh ingredients, if you will. But I'm just here to tell you that this froze stuff creates a delicious soup that nobody is going to complain about. Now what you want to make sure that you have is some of this seasoning blend. You want this to be around 15 to 20% of what you put in. So this is going to provide a ton of flavor to the soup. Make sure to get that in there. This is all of your onions and peppers and some celery, some herbs, a lot of what you've probably called the Holy Trinity. And then we've got some vegetable soup, vegetables, and you know, a lot of these things have got recurring themes like corn, beans, stuff like that. I like to go heavier with some things. I've got at least two or three bags of the gumbo vegetables because I like the okra that's in there, the corn, peppers. And we're gonna add in a bag of speckled butter beans. I like these in my soup more, and so I make sure to add a heavier concentration. If you don't want a whole lot of different types of beans or corn, don't add in extra. Just use the blends and you'll be fine. Then I've got some white corn. Corn, you know, it adds a nice little sweet element to the flavor. And since I'm gonna have a lot of salty and some spicy in this soup, corn is a must. Yellow corn. Another bag of vegetable soup. And I said vegetable soup, that's where your carrots and like your green beans come from. Another bag of the gumbo vegetables. So we got 3 bags of the gumbo vegetables. And like I said, this is not really a recipe. You're not probably gonna mess this up. What you're gonna do is once we get all this in here and when it gets to cooking, we're gonna be tasting the broth. And as long as you got vegetables and meat in there or just vegetables and the broth tastes good, it's gonna be good. Now I've got some butter beans. These are for my little girls. They love some butter beans. And so I'm expecting this batch of soup to last us through most of the winter. So we're gonna be freezing this stuff in gallon bags and thawing it out, and it comes back to life incredibly well. Another bag of the seasoning blend. And for just a little extra kick of onion and pepper, I've got a 3 pepper and onion blend. A little heavier on the peppers. Lots of color. You know, when you got lots of color, you got lots of flavor. And so for right now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna stir this up, and we're gonna start shredding up our chicken. It's gonna take this a while to come back to a boil since all of this was frozen. Now that we've got all that in there, it's time to go in with our tomatoes. So what we're adding for tomatoes are 4 of these larger can, 28 ounce of diced tomatoes. Sort of like the size you get with Rotel tomatoes. You can, do whatever size you like. Like I said, all this stuff, when you're making vegetable soup, you get a lot of freedom with it. We're adding 4 of these large cans. I could not find a gallon can, so I went with 4 of these. And then we've got 1 can of tomato paste. Now this is gonna kind of enrich the flavor of the tomatoes and add a little bit of color to our broth as well. And I know I'm gonna get some hate in the comments because, this isn't like a step-by-step recipe, but here at American Smoke, it's a lot of like country type cooking. And a lot of times with country cooking, you ask your grandmama, you ask your mama, your aunt, your uncle, whoever, your friend, so how'd you make this? And they'll say, oh, well, I kind of just go by sight, And you get a lot of that with these home cooked meals. And the way that you get that, and the reason that people can give you those answers, is because of experience. And you just can't fake experience, like Coach Saban always says. So I encourage you to go out to your freezer section or your fresh section, get you lots of vegetables and some meat and some seasonings, and start making you some soup and learn how to make it the way that you like it. If you get anything close to what I do here today, you're gonna have you a new favorite, I promise. This is gonna be better than anything you get anywhere else, no doubt about it. All right, then for just a little extra kick of flavor, I'm gonna add in 2 or 3 bay leaves into the pot. If you're doing a smaller pot, definitely don't add 2 or 3. Bay leaves have a lot of flavor. And then we're gonna be hitting it up with a little bit of the magic. This is just some Tony Chachere seasoning, Creole seasoning. You can use whatever type of seasoning you like. I typically go with Creole. We're gonna go pretty heavy into this pot. This is a big pot and the meat's not even in there yet. So then we're gonna be adding in a little salt and pepper. Remember, this is big portions, so go big on your flavor. And you can always adjust your salt, pepper, flavor as you cook. But think, instead of shakes, think teaspoons. So we're adding maybe 2 teaspoons of salt, a solid 2 teaspoons of pepper, a few teaspoons of Tony Chachere's Cajun seasoning, tomato paste, lots of tomatoes. Get it in there, stir it up. What you're gonna have is just a ton of color, a ton of flavor. That's all gonna cook down and meld together in this giant pot. While that's heating back up, we can go ahead and start shredding our chicken. Next steps is just to shred your chicken, and you wanna shred this down to pulled status. You wanna just really get in there and work it. If you've got a set of meat claws, that makes this process a little bit easier to do. If you don't have meat claws, that's fine. It's not like, you have to have meat claws to shred chicken. You can just get you a couple forks and make your own meat claws, no big deal. This is how I've always done it before I got me some meat claws. And in some cases, the precision control that you get with a couple forks is better. Now, if you do end up with some, a little bit larger chunks than what you want, a lot of that's gonna fall apart in the slow boiling process anyway. And so don't worry about it. You can also take you a chef's knife and chop this chicken up if you like, but I've always just preferred the look and texture of shredded chicken in my vegetable soup. Okay, so when it comes to my thighs, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull that skin off and set it right over there. I'm probably gonna chop that and get it back into the soup, but I don't want big chunks in there. And then I'm gonna use my hands and debone the chicken meat. So with our thigh meat, we're gonna chop it. Came out in a lot of small pieces, so I'm just going with a chop. And the last thing that we've got to do as far as meat prep is concerned is we're going to chop up our skins from our chicken thighs really finely, and it's just going to add extra creaminess to our soup. Just chip chop, chippity chip chip chop. Chop that skin up. So now that we've got that chopped up finely, we can add that in with the rest of our chicken meat and get it into the soup. Okay, so all of our labors are just about done. The soup is heating back up and all of the meat is ready and prepped. We can go ahead and get our beef into the soup and our shredded and chopped chicken thighs and breasts into the soup. Get that incorporated in. I know that when I was prepping all of that beef and prepping all of that chicken, it seemed like a whole lot, but when you incorporate it into all of this good stuff, it starts to have a balance. You can see we've just got some really nice colors, beautiful soup. What we're going to do now is we're going to let it come up to temp, come up to a nice simmer, and from there it's just going to be a matter of getting the consistency that I like, which I can go ahead and tell you right now. I'm probably going to be adding another gallon and a half of water to the soup just to thin it out a little bit. And then after that, it's just a matter of tasting your broth and cooking it until everything's tender. So no flavor left behind. We're just gonna go into this pan that we cooked our stew meat in with some butter and maybe a little water. And we're gonna get this pan, see if we can't work some of this fond off of the edges, get all that into our vegetable soup. Get that butter melted down, and then all of this is just gonna go right back into the soup. So I think I mentioned it earlier, but fond is what cooks onto your pan in a cook. The stuff that really reduces down and burns on, and it's just full of flavor. So if you can get that off and back into your food, that's what you call winning. So we got a lot of that on this pan here. We're gonna get it up, get it into the soup. Let that cook down and just sort of work that water around the edges. Scrub some of that mess off of there. You can see all that color that's in this is just intense beef flavor that was cooked onto the bottom of our skillet. Let's go ahead and get that fond and a little bit more water into our pot. That's that flavor. Get it up a little bit more water. We'll start off with another gallon, and we'll see how it cooks down and what the broth tastes like as it continues to cook and all the flavors marry. I like it to be a little soupy and still a little chunky. That's looking excellent. Here in a little while we'll give it a taste. Go and get the lid back on it. Let it do its thing. Let's get in here, give it a taste, and see if it needs any small tweaks. That tastes really good, but I think we're going to add a little bit more flavor to the pot. Just so happens that I'm just about out of salt in this shaker and Tony's in this shaker, and so we're just going to pop it with the rest of that. When you're doing a big recipe like this, it's easy to underdo on your seasonings, because if you're like me, you know, I don't cook huge pots like this a lot, you know, and so It's better to go too light in the beginning and then add more in later than to try to go super heavy and hope you hit the nail on the head early on. But once it's in there, you can't take it out. If you want to add more later, you can always do that. That's the reason I don't go super heavy early on. Well, we've got some really nice looking soup coming along. We're going to see what this does for the flavor. We're going to give that about 30 more minutes of cook time. Let that salt and Tony's sort of marry in, and then we're going to come back and see how it tastes. Well, we've been at a slow rolling boil now for about 2.5 hours-ish. What I've been doing, I've just been sampling the soup, and I have been tasting a butter bean or a piece of beef from here and there, waiting for everything to get nice and tender. And let me tell you, it's just right. So let's go ahead and we'll shut the gas off, give it a stir, and start letting the cooling process start. And then we can get a little taste and see what a full spoon of this delicious vegetable soup tastes like. Get all our gas shut off here. We've been having some issues today with our burner. I think I've got some trash in my line, and so I've kind of had to nurse this pretty much the whole time. Look at all that goodness in there. Oh, mama. That's what I'm talking about right there. That's the good stuff. That's the stuff that you take out of the freezer, you throw it in a pot and let it warm up on the stove when it's cold outside, and you're so glad that you've got it. I mean, that's what it's all about right there. Yep. I know I couldn't be more excited about it. I always look forward to this every year. This is the most I've ever made all at once. Usually I've got me like a little 2-gallon pot that I'll make, and that'll last us maybe, 5 or 6 meals. It's just got all that goodness in there. There we go. And so what I plan on doing is I plan on letting this cool for about an hour, and then we're going to be taking Ziploc bags, filling the Ziploc bag about 3/4 of the way up, zipping it up and freezing it, and it's just no more complicated than that. You can vacuum seal this stuff. I've done that. That works really well. Reduces any sort of air bubbles or anything. But when you think about it, it's liquid, and the air bubbles aren't really going to get caught up in it like they would a bunch of chicken tenders or something. So it's just going to kind of sit there, and it's going to push all the air out of itself already. So y'all can handle that however you want to handle it. But we're about to get into some of this delicious, chunky, homemade vegetable soup. Got me a nice piece of stew meat there, a little bit of chicken, some peas, some corn, some tomatoes. I promise you it's still scorching hot. Time to go in for that bite. Holy crap. If that right there don't warm you up on a cold day, not because I just took all the skin off the inside of my mouth, but because of the heartiness and the deliciousness and the warmness. I've got nerve damage on my tongue now, so I don't have to worry about it ever feeling cold again, or it might only feel cold. I don't know. I should have waited. But just took it off the boiler. My first instinct is to go in for another bite. Guys, I know this wasn't necessarily a recipe cook, but basically just put all your favorite vegetables in there with some of the Holy Trinity. Get you that seasoning blend, That's what I'm saying when I say the Holy Trinity. You got your onions, peppers, and your celery. And season to taste, salt, pepper. Throw some garlic in there if you like. Throw some Tony Chachere's in there or your favorite Cajun seasoning. Heck, whatever you like flavor-wise, throw it in there. I promise you it's not going to be bad. Cook it until your corn, peas and beef are all tender to texture, typically between 1 and 3 hours, somewhere in there, depending on how fast you boil. I recommend a slower simmer. That way it gives more chance for all the flavors to marry. Have a big get together, serve everybody some soup, or do like we're doing, freeze it up in 1-gallon bags and eat good soup through the whole winter. Guys, if I left any sort of details out, which I probably did, let me know and I'll answer your questions down in the comments below. Let me know your favorite soup to make for the winter in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. Smoke on, and I'll see y'all in the next video.